Hey, I'm Jason Weber, host of the More Than Enough podcast. This is an interview with Justin Whitmel Early from a recent episode. For more conversations like this, subscribe to the audio podcast below. I'm here with Justin Whitmel Early. Hey, Justin, thanks so much for joining us.
You're so welcome, Jason. Thrilled to be here.
I was wondering if you could just give us a little bit of context. I've got the privilege of hearing you speak a few different times, but I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of context. It's sort of a story you often tell about this pivotal moment in your life where you realized, hey, I've got to make some changes.
Yeah. You're not bored by it yet?
No, man. Bring it.
My story is I used to be a missionary in China and did that for a couple years until I felt called by the Lord to go to law school. Really did feel called. So I ran at law school with all the fervor of a man on a call. Mm-hmm. This would have been my late 20s. Wife and I were married. We had 2 sons. And I came out into law school in my young 30s as a Christian who had a really great head on his shoulders. Like, I was smart from law school, graduated towards the top of my class. We had our first 2 kids. Like, life was going well. I had this great missionary background. So, like, worldview-wise, just like everything's going great.
Got it together.
What I didn't know at the time was that my habits were a wreck because I had assimilated to all the typical habits and practices of law school and lawyering. But it didn't seem to me to be a problem because that's what everybody was doing. I suddenly realized it was a problem in my first year of lawyering when my body started totally rebelling. So I collapsed into what I now know is very common for lawyers: panic attacks, insomnia, really dark year of mental health. But I was really confused at how this could happen to me because I thought that, if I had the right thoughts in my mind, it would sink down into my body. I had basically a one-way view of how a human works. It's like thoughts equal embodied output, never vice versa. But I was in a weird stage of my life where the missionary to law had become converted to the nervous medicating lawyer, where I was either needing to take sleeping pills to go to bed or have a drink just to get some rest at night. I mean, it was a really bad time of life. And I felt embarrassed, convicted, what is going on, what's happening to me? It was a really long process. This was not a simple thing to solve. But what happened in summary was I kind of stumbled my way into the spiritual disciplines. I've always been a reader, I was definitely reading. And my wife and I were trying to figure out what could help me get back on track. And we came up with some daily habits and some weekly habits. Different ways I would look at my phone, like scripture before phone in the morning, Sabbath once a week, making sure there was time for a meaningful conversation with friends once a week. Because remember, I'm in mental health crisis and sharing with people and talking to people became really important. Turning off my phone. So it's this weird mix of classic spiritual disciplines scripture, prayer, and community, Sabbath, but with modern, sort of technological versions of in order to do that, you're gonna have to turn your phone off at this time, keep your phone away from you, shut down your work for a day a week. And Jason, I didn't think any of this stuff was gonna matter because I didn't know at the time how much the most ordinary habits of our days and weeks impact our minds, bodies, and souls in the most extraordinary ways. And so not only was that the pivot where I started to come back to mental health, but it was also an incredibly important pivot in my spiritual life. And I'm going to say this a lot probably in this conversation. They tend to go together, right? God made us with bodies, as it turns out, on purpose. Right. So our physical life impacts our spiritual life, and our spiritual life is always becoming our physical life. So this was a huge turn for me. And over the decade that has followed, exploring how when your head goes one way and your habits go another, your heart tends to follow the habit. That has been the thing that has been the subject of all my writing, and because it's been the subject of all my life, of realizing that I can, like the demons, know that God is one. It's not significant in and of itself to know certain things unless you know them in such a way that you are changed by them. And this is what we call the life of faith, where head and habit intertwine into a life of love. And so I could explain all that you want about that, but that was my pivotal moment where I just realized that to follow Jesus in the modern world means you're going to have to choose different habits. And I've been writing about it ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know from some of your writings, you talk about habits of the household. So some of the things you've already mentioned are spiritual disciplines that maybe people are familiar with, and we all maybe practice those to greater or lesser degrees in consistency. But you made an allusion to this, like especially in terms of technology. Like there's these other things that you have been very deliberate about that go beyond what we would normally think of as spiritual disciplines. That have been really important parts of your life. I mean, with your kids. And can you describe some of those things?
Yeah. So two of the realizations that I came to in doing habit research, and like Jason, I fell headlong into this stuff because. Yeah. Well, I mean, one, I was in crisis, so I was trying to figure out what's happening to me. Yeah. And two, I'm a writer and a lawyer. I like reading and I like breaking things down systematically. And so I think two of the things that I found out, one was from psychology and one is from theology. Psychologically speaking, I started to realize that, oh my gosh, 40% plus of our life literally is made up of habit. As in 40% of the choices you make every day are not consciously made. They're a product of what we would call subconscious or unconscious action, which is in habit. So almost at least half, if not more, of everyone's life is habit. So you can't not have them, right? Yeah. And this was a light bulb for me because most people are thinking oh, I either like habits and structure and rhythms or I don't. And I was like, no, well, look, I am from an English literature background, artistic, played in bands in college, didn't wear shoes. I was strong hippie vibe. My missionary years were very unstructured in some ways. I am a person who has come to realize that no matter what sort of version of a person you think you are, everyone has habits. And so they're governing your life. The questions are just which ones, okay? Wow. So, and this is that's the psychological one. It bleeds into the neurological one. It bleeds into the neurological one, bleeds into the theological one. And that's this idea that means that your ordinary life is full of liturgies of worship to something, right? Because when you understand that habits are functioning as guiding your life and literally turning your head and your eyes and your heart towards things that may or may not be good things. I mean, and you can see this in any simple example. You have a habit of doing a quiet time, you're going to be formed more in the image of God through it. You have a habit of scrolling TikTok, you're going to be formed more in the image of what you're looking at. Yeah. And it's pretty weird stuff out there, For sure. So just at a literal level, you're being formed in the image of something. The Bible calls that worship. When you cultivate devotion towards something. To us, we're one is spiritual, I'm doing a quiet time. One is, secular, just non-spiritual, I'm scrolling this. And the Bible doesn't accept those categories. We don't have an on-off switch for worship. So the big theological realization is that if so much of our life is built of habit, it means that a lot of our life is worship in places we didn't think we were worshiping. And I know you asked about parenting and kids, but this was the area where I suddenly realized, both in my own life and in my life of parenting, that there were quote unquote liturgies of worship available to me everywhere. And a lot of them were liturgies to worship of myself or something weird. And so, for example, I, like every other parent, have a really hard time putting my 4 boys to bed at night. It's really hard to put small kids to bed. It's really hard.
And they're boys.
Yeah, and they're 4 boys. And so it's a fraternity house vibe of wildness. And so,
everybody pray for Justin's furniture.
Yeah. We have a lot of broken stuff. We're literally in the midst of a debate right now. What kind of sectional do we buy? And my wife is she's we gotta spend a lot on this thing because it's going to get beat up. If we buy the cheap one, it's going to get broken. And I'm yeah, you're right. Because a lot of stuff gets broken in our house. So bedtimes are chaotic. And I, like so many other parents, am struggling with just being so angry and yelling kids to bed. And I realized at one point, I have a liturgy of anger and control in the evening. I've got a habit of yelling them to bed. Even as a writer who writes about liturgies and habits of technology and worth and healthy practices. And my eyes were open to this realm of normal household responses, normal household practices, which could become liturgies of love. And so we started things like, bedtime blessings in those moments, not because they make our kids behave, like it doesn't but it changes the way I approach the moment. When I know we're going to do this prayer before bed, and we've got a lot of them, I'm different, and it opens, and habits in the household, this was my great realization of working on the book called Habits of the Household, they open up new ways of us responding to our kids and sort of letting the love of God into our relationship. And it's been so helpful for me to sort of pull that cloak off the ordinary habits of the household and be like, they're all spiritual. They're just not all spiritual in good ways.
Yeah.
So, be creative and look for ways that you can bring the gospel into ordinary moments, because that's what the whole household is made of.
Yeah. That's so good. So good. One of the things that you've started writing about more recently is community and relationships. And one of the things we talk about all the time, and more than enough, is that organizations don't collaborate, people do.
Mm-hmm.
Like very often when folks that are working on foster care and communities start talking about collaboration, they're like, we'll get together. Certainly there will be bagels there, and we will strategize how to change our community forever. But often, and then they get to the end of the brunch, and then it's sort of like, hey, yeah, we should do that. We'll do that again next year. But what we talk about all the time is unless you are building relationship with people, that collaboration is not going to go very far. The collaboration is built on relationship, which is built on trust. It takes time.
That's a great insight.
So, I'd love for you to share that. I mean, I know from listening to you in the past, you talk about, and it's a phrase that, some of us on the team have thrown out, like back porch friends. Mm-hmm. Like you talk about these friends that you have to this day that you sit on the back porch and talk about everything.
Yes.
Right? So talk a little bit about building community and what it's meant for you and what that looks like.
This is so helpful because we're moving in concentric circles here, which is how I write.
Okay,
my crisis started with I need spiritual disciplines to help me, and then I started to realize that in my family, this actually matters too. And the next book that I wanted to write, and the next subject of our conversation, it sounds like, is what does this mean for communal relationships?
That was totally intentional.
Yeah, you're brilliant.
Totally,
you're brilliant. Yeah. So I do think about that a lot, mostly, Jason, because friends have saved my life. And I mean it as literal as you can get and as metaphorical as you can get. I mean, one, when I was in my anxiety crisis, which included suicidal thoughts, by the way, it was a really dark time. Talking to friends was not only what kept me physically safe, but it is also what actually led to the realization that I had. So I told a condensed version of the story, but it was literally sitting with two of my friends, Matt and Steve, one night around a new year when I was like, can you keep me accountable to this program of habits? Like, it was conversation with them in person at a vulnerable time that the Lord then brought change into my life. And as it turns out, psychologically speaking, people just don't change alone. You can look at Alcoholics Anonymous research for this. It's just any really sticky problem on our life, you use friends to change. Mm-hmm. Wonderful neurological insight into the church. It's why God gave us each other. We don't change alone. We always change together. So friendship was a huge part of my story. And as I started to look at this theory of life of, most of the important things going on in life are obscured by habit. And so you have to pull the cloak off and find out what's spiritually going on when you don't think anything spiritual is going on. I started to realize, this explains the loneliness epidemic that we're encountering, because so much of our new modern life is influenced by the American culture of individualism and the technological culture of just literally scrolling alone. So we're spit out into a world where think of it as a hill or maybe a current. The trajectory of American life is to become busier, wealthier people who used to have friends. This is where you're going unless you climb up that hill. It's fight against that current. And that means actual embodied interactions. And the way you put it is fantastic. Clearly, a lot of us are around each other at work or in the grocery store or even in meetings. But the kinds of interactions that change who we are face-to-face conversations, and lots of times in play and in just enjoyment of each other. My friends Matt and Steve, who I mentioned, changed my life, not just because of that one conversation, but because that conversation has been part of a series of now decades. Like literally. One of the things that Stephen and Matt and I talk about is we marked the moment where our friendship was measured in decades. And it wasn't that long ago, but we finally hit multiple decades together. Yeah. And the idea that we get together regularly, we aspire to once every other week. We average, honestly, about once a month of sitting on a back porch together, just talking about our lives and telling the truth. I feel like, a lot of people could listen to this and be like, what are we talking about? Like, what's so radical about this? And again, I just want to pull the curtain off. It is absolutely radical for you as a modern American to sit with other people and be honest about what your life is actually like, to become a person without secrets, as I call it. Yeah. Where anything from how you're spending your money to your internet history to your most recent fight with your spouse or your worry over your kids' mental health or your own mental health is actually shared and shared about regularly. This is where vulnerability meets commitment. And I call that covenant friendship, where you're actually in a recurring mode being honest with people. I cannot understate how much this changes people's lives. And if you want to create a community that is changing your city, if you want to create a community in your church that's changing people, that's doing evangelism, that's caring for the least and the last, like if you want to change anything, like any movement, like people don't do that without pillars of covenant friendship, upholding what we call organizations or communities. Like, let me just draw that out for 1 second. Lots of people do community, and I'm all for it. Like, lots of people are around each other in organizations and in churches. But the idea of that being a flourishing unit that acts is predicated on specific one-to-one or threefold relationships, smaller groups. Yeah. I think of it as a funnel. Like, your church or your organization should be like pushing people downward into small face-to-face interactions, because it's those, what I call covenant friendships. Those are the pillars that hold up what you can imagine as the big bridge or the roof of what we call community. And no community thrives unless you have those kinds of relationships. And those kinds of relationships take incredible intentionality, but they're literally the best thing for your spiritual health, your actual physical health. Like, this is why the West has gotten so concerned about the epidemic of loneliness, is because it's killing us. Yeah. So like, it's just a beautiful thing that covenant friendship, as God designed it, and as he demonstrates it in the person of Jesus, so good for your spiritual health, so good for your physical health, and is what changes the world in organizations and churches and communities. So I'm like, make this a habit, like go for it.
So as I listen to you, and I'm going to back up just a little bit from talking about building toward friendship in the context of collaboration, and just go back to this idea of a lot of people listening are in leadership roles, right? And one of the most common things is that they just continue, as they move towards leadership, they grow in isolation. Yes. And so they're listening to you right now talk about these back porch friends you have. Right. And they're thinking, that's so nice for you. Like, I mean, that's great. I'm glad you have that. I don't know how to get that. Yeah. What would you say to that?
That's such a good question. Because I want to be gentle with that person. I mean, let me answer the how-to second. I mean, I would just say, you said something really important, and that is that, leadership gets lonely at the top. People, as they grow in their stewardship of something, tend to shrink in their community. Yeah. And that is the work of the enemy, okay? It doesn't have to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. We were made for people such that even Adam in Genesis 2, God calls him alone. Like, it's not good that you're alone. You're lonely in the garden even when God is there, if you lack intimate relationship horizontally, because you can't experience God the way you're made to experience him unless you experience him alongside other people. Apparently, that's how God made us. So not my idea, it's God's idea. Like, the Trinity said it, I didn't, because we're made in the image of the Trinity. And so the idea that we could be following God or leading an organization while being isolated is antithetical to creation, it's antithetical to leadership, it's antithetical to following Jesus. Like, Jesus finds us where we are, but he never leaves us where we are. He's always calling us to vulnerable community in the church. So want to say, like, if that's where you find yourself, you are in great danger. Yeah. You are in great danger. The enemy's favorite thing to do is to get you alone. Think about Eve, like get her alone and then whisper some weird thoughts into her ear. Mm-hmm. And if you're leading an organization alone, the enemy's got your ear and he's whispering weird things. The antidote to that is to move into vulnerable relationships. And now onto your question, like, well, how? Okay. So, I once was talking about this. So like my book on this is called Made for People, on that idea of Genesis 2, we're made for people. I was once talking about this to a group of actually nonprofit leaders. And one of them came up to me the next morning in the conference in this hotel breakfast. And he was like, I love what you were saying. But he's like, Justin, if I had friends like that, if I was telling my secrets, like they could get me fired. And my response was just exactly. Like, that's exactly why you need it. Because you are dangerous to yourself and your organization alone. And by the way, I'm talking about sinners being friends with sinners. Like to tell someone, right. Everybody, to tell a couple people everything in your life is to tell them about like all the ways you're broken. And all of us would be, we'd be canceled. We'd all be shown for what we actually are. Turns out we're sinners. But also all of us are healed in these kinds of things. Like that's the way I've grown to be something I didn't expect 6-7 years ago when I started writing, like an author that people read and like a voice that people follow. And so like I have a now increased leadership capacity. And one of the things that I think about as most urgent for my life, my writings, and my family is to be known by other people so that I don't become a person who harbors secrets that would otherwise take me down. Of course, I'm a sinner. And of course, if I told them all right now, you'd be like, maybe you shouldn't be on the podcast, but so would anybody else. And so that's all to say, one of the how-tos is you're not disqualified from a need for friendship by virtue of you being important. It's actually more important because of your leadership. So don't let that stop you first. The way to do it is, I call it show up, speak up, and come back. Okay? Show up, speak up, and come back. This could be anybody listening who's just like, hey, I'm lonely in my regular life and maybe I should show up to a Bible study, actually speak up when I'm there, and come back again next time. It could be super small. For somebody in leadership, I think what you need to do is you need to find a like-minded or similarly situated person. It's going to help to have somebody who understands your burden. It's also going to help if you have like any like old college friend, old high school friend, old church friend who can keep you grounded and remind you that you're actually, turns out, you're not terribly as important as you think. Like you're actually not super important. Right. Like one of the things that I love about my friends, about like Steve and Matt, for example, is they are kind enough to be like, hey, I'll pray for you when you go speak. Hey, I'm going to buy your new book. Tell me about it. But they're also like relatively unimpressed. Yeah. They don't follow me on social media. They don't care. Like they care about whether I showed up to the last porch night. Yeah. They love to make fun of me when they see like, Justin's in a magazine. Somebody read an article about him. They're like, they're like drawing pictures on my face and making fun of me. Yeah. Good friends will be friends who are diverse from you in occupation, diverse from you in leadership, and thus can make you honest about your actual life. Like stay grounded in real friendships. Like don't live in an online community of leaders. This is a long, but I think important answer. So it's like, get regular friends, get friends that are in leadership, and like you've got to show up to something. So maybe it's like join a gym and actually show up, and then speak up. It's like, well, have a coffee after the workout or before, like, have a drink after the run. Go show up to the accountability group and talk about something, and then keep coming back. The art of friendship is actually, it is far harder than people think because it turns out it's hard to show up, speak up, and come back. But it's also far simpler. It's literally just showing up in the same place and telling the truth about your life. And vulnerability catalyzes vulnerability. When you come and you tell the truth, everybody around you is like, oh, I didn't know we were allowed to do that. I actually got something I'd like to share too. Some people will say, oh, that's weird, I'm not coming back. That's fine. Like Jesus was betrayed by friends too, okay? But showing up, speaking up, being honest is typically seen as commitment and courage to the people around you. And any leader, wherever they are, can spark that. Friendship is available to you. You've got to do it in a rhythm, though.
I love that.
One last thing I want to ask you about and ask you to tell a story because it's been personally meaningful to me and my wife. You know, a lot of the people listening, they're doing incredible work and they're helping children and families. But while they're doing that, they're going through incredibly difficult things personally. They're going through incredibly difficult things at home. And you tell a story that starts with working out, which is a whole other thing. But would you be willing to share a little bit about that and the conclusion you came to during that time?
Absolutely. I mean, part of my story that I've been telling is the story of the Lord showing me how important my body is to my soul, and my body is to my mental health, how important embodied life is to spiritual life. And again, in my story, I sort of thought it only worked top down. Like if I believed the right things, I would feel the right way. And as it turns out, God made us with bodies on purpose, called them good, very good. In fact, Genesis 1 tells us that he made us the image bearers of God and said we were very good. So we're made with bodies. He's redeemed us by the body of his son. He's going to resurrect us to new bodies. Bodies are not a plan B, as it turns out. Like God loves them. And so caring for them is one of the ways that we honor him and spiritually grow. And I did not realize this. Anybody who goes through a mental health crisis like I was starts to intuit that, hey, maybe you should take care of your body a little better. So I was in this place about 6-7 years ago. I was just coming out of my big law firm, like boot camp years of learning how to be a lawyer. And I just started my own law firm. And I remember thinking, man, if I could figure out how to work exercise into my routine, that would be awesome. But I didn't know how. And I was working at a coffee shop. I'm starting my law firm. I don't have an office yet. I'm just working out of coffee shops. And I hear all this banging next door. I walk over, find out it's a CrossFit gym where these guys are like lifting weights. And I was like, man, maybe I could just start coming here. So I try it. I start showing up for classes. And wanting to exercise and actually exercising are quite different.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The former is super easy. Everybody wants to exercise.
Well, I want to be a concert pianist, but I do not want to practice a piano.
The latter is really hard. Like you get tired. It kind of hurts. And I was constantly breaking up the workouts to take bathroom breaks or drink water because I was new to this. It was super hard. I didn't, I was like, this is awful. And I remember one day I had a day that changed my life. The instructor came over to me as I was about to take a water break, and he was like, hey, just pick up the weight one more time. And we were doing this, like you had to pick it up off the ground, lift it above your head. And so I picked it up one more time. And then he was like, good, just one more time. I did it one more time. And I was like, can I go get water yet? And he's like, yes, just one more time. And I was like, whoa, this dude's going to stay here. There's 8 minutes left in the workout. He's not going to let me go. And I was like, so I got stuck. And I just stayed, and I was like lifting this weight. I remember collapsing on the ground afterwards and feeling this weird mix of like pleasure and suffering. And that was like, well, I did it. The wall that I thought was the wall was not actually the wall. And you could put that on a gym poster, right? Like It was by itself, it wasn't anything miraculous. It was just like, oh, there was more of me beyond what I thought there was. This is interesting. It was the next morning that I'm taking care of my toddler son, and he knocks his sippy cup off the high chair. And I pick it up, and my legs are so sore from that. Like, I'm like, ow. And I put his sippy cup back up, and I go to get something from the kitchen, and I hear, as toddlers do, he, bam, knocks it off again, like backhands it across the room. Like, seeming to me intentional. This is the mistake me and many parents make, thinking our toddlers are out to get us.
For sure.
And they're just being toddlers. But I got... Jason, honestly, that moment, I had the darkness, like I was like about to discipline a toddler for being a toddler, when I heard a voice in my head just say, pick it up. And it was like, whoa, the coach is nowhere around. That was the Holy Spirit. And I walked over, I just picked up the sippy cup, smiled and winked at my toddler, put it back. And I do not exaggerate when I say my life has been different ever since that moment. Because I realized in the wake of that moment that my body had something to teach my soul, that the gym could be a spiritual gymnasium, that this idea that the wall is not the wall physically is also true spiritually, that when you think you're at the end of your patience or your capacity or your ability to suffer or to carry your cross, that's exactly where grace begins, because you've hit the end of yourself. what you can do alone.
That's right.
Which means you're at the beginning of God, the beginning of grace, what he can do through you. When Paul, and that's why Paul writes, I asked him to take away my sufferings. And he said, my grace is sufficient for you in your weakness, because the wall is not the wall physically or spiritually. There is more of God when we find the end of ourself. And that, like, for me, has been a principle that has to be exercised into existence. And I think I'm probably more similar to other people than not. But for me, and this is sort of the kernel of the subject of the book that I've been working on this whole year called The Body Teaches the Soul. It's the idea that your physical encounters with the world, because God made you embodied, teach you, like, not just literally in your head, but that train you so that you intuit in your soul, the deepest part of you, truths of the world, like hard things make you more loving. Hard things make you stronger. Suffering is the path of sanctification. And so I cherish that gym now. I'm still at it 7 years later as a spiritual gymnasium, as a place where the Lord, I think, is sanctifying me through exercise. And I see exercise as a spiritual discipline. But I would offer that to listeners, not as a go exercise in this way tomorrow, though I do think you should consider it because it's part of honoring God in your body and changing so many other spiritual parts of your life. But also just as a paradigm for thinking about your life, that God is going to use embodied things to make you a more loving person, which means don't ignore your body. He made it on purpose, like go through it to learn your spirituality.
Yeah. That phrase, the wall is not the wall, has become a mantra at our house. And
I was really encouraged. You told me the story of you and your wife talking about that, and it's very encouraging.
Yeah.
Even though I know that phrase applied always means there's a dark side. It always means you're suffering.
Yeah.
It always means there's something difficult going on. And so I don't take that lightly either.
Yeah. Justin, thank you so much for spending the time with us. Really appreciate you and the work you're doing, and grateful for you sharing it with us.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And I will say to everyone listening, I am grateful for the work you all are doing because it is the hands and feet of Jesus to be out there serving children like you do. And I'm so grateful you exist in the body of Christ.
Thanks, Justin.
You're welcome, man.